Welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily. In today's episode, I have pulled together 20 amazing farmhouse DIYs for you. They are all skill levels from beginner to advanced and everything in between. I really think you are going to like all of these DIYs. If you like crafting, DIYs, dupes, hacks, thrift flips, or just creating in general, I would love if you would consider subscribing and becoming my crafting BFF. If you do like any of today's projects, remember to hit that thumbs up, but let's go make some DIYs. This darling sign came from Etsy, and it is darling the way that it is, but it is the perfect shape for exactly what I would like to do. They're having such amazing clearance right now, and I love that you can see it was $25 and I paid less than $5 for it, so it's definitely a bargain. Always check out that clearance section or the sales section at your local craft store or home decor store, and just keep in mind that you can always repurpose things. Now this chicken is absolutely adorable, but I did need to sand the surface on this sign because I wanted my paint to stick to it really well, and it kind of had a texture on it that I wanted to rough up a bit so my paint really would stick really well to it. I'm going to try a crackle technique on this sign here, and so I want my base color to be kind of a dark brown, and as I was doing this I do end up adding a little bit of white. I'll show you that in just a moment and kind of show you why I did that, but I just make sure that I get every edge of the sign. Now a sign from Dollar Tree would work fine. Some scrap wood would work fine. You just basically want this general shape. And I wanted this to kind of look like wood coming through, or have just a couple different dimensions or elements of paint coming through. And so I dry brushed some white onto here, and I'm really happy with how this all comes together in the end. So even though I don't love the way it looks right here while I'm doing this, it comes out really well in the end with the crackle technique on it. So I just make sure to pounce a little bit of that white paint on the sides too, so that way the whole sign looks cohesive. So this is a crackle medium. You can get it in spray form, you can get it in liquid form like this. There's several different brands. This is Folk Art, and I just placed it down on my sign, and you're going to paint all over the entire sign. And you can see how glossy it looks there once you get everything done. Read your instructions and let your item sit for as long as the instructions say. So mine said to let it sit for an hour for that to completely dry. So now I'm just taking some green, this is just some acrylic paint. It is eucalyptus leaf, I believe the color said there. And I am just going to paint this over the entire sign. Now you want to make sure that when you're using a crackle medium, you do not paint over the area that you've already done. You don't keep going back over it because you will disturb the process. So that's why you can kind of see me working in sections here. And you can already see in that first area the crackle is starting to take effect. Now, the crackle medium is something that's been around for a long time. I think it's kind of gaining a little bit more popularity now. So I was so excited to be able to use it and kind of show you how this works. You can see there how that crackle starts to look. I just love it. Now, while this paint was a little bit wet, I took my finger inside of a baby wipe and went along some of the edges. This sign had kind of a natural wood edge to it that kind of had some like cut marks in it. And so I just went along with my finger along each of those. So that way to kind of distress it a little bit more, kind of a wet distressing here. So that way the edges of these little details on the sign kind of popped. So if your sign doesn't have that, obviously you may want to skip this step here, but just showing you that when you have fun little detailed edges or things like that, it makes them pop a little bit more if you do kind of do a little bit more distressing. Now, I know Walmart, your craft store, a lot of different places are starting to carry a huge amount of these wood cut letters. So you don't have to do this. You can use stenciling, you can do a Cricut, you can hand do it, you can print on tissue paper, but I just wanted to show you all of these different types of letters that I found at Hobby Lobby. They also had these darling galvanized letters, which would have been really cute. Of course, you just want to pay attention to the price of them. I am just doing these letters right here that spell the word herbs. I thought this would be perfect for my porch this summer, so that way I could have a cute little herb garden, and I just thought the colors on this sign were so cute. I did take a little antiquing wax around the edge of all of these letters to kind of help them pop a little bit more, and I'm just using some super glue. This is like the DAP brand that I get at Lowe's, Gorilla Glue, any kind of glue, even the stuff you get at Dollar Tree would work fine. I really like using that on these letters with the paint. I feel like you get a really good bond, and I don't have a problem with them sticking or coming off or anything like that. And you do have a few seconds of time to be able to move your letters around after you place them down so you can kind of manipulate them a little bit. But look at how darling this sign turns out. I love this. It's going to be perfect for my porch. I love the colors and the contrast, and you can see with the crackle how you get both the white and the brown from behind, and I think that really adds such a darling element to this sign. What do you guys think of this? Do you like this? This project is a remake or a take on a table that I have made before. It is a tiered tray that is a potting, inspired by a potting table. It is one of my most popular DIYs, and I found these little pictures at Dollar Tree, and I thought they would be perfect because I've been looking for something to kind of simplify the process to make this table. Now, you could see the one was kind of falling apart there. I had to glue the sides together. These were the only two that I found in the Dollar Tree I was in that day. If you find these, grab them because they are perfect for this project. Now, I did remove the tin there, the little sign that said home. I believe the other one here says friends, it looks like. And you can hang on to those, use those for other projects if you want, trash them, whatever you want to do. But the glue did leave a little bit of residue behind, so I'm just sanding these. And this is just going to distress them, and it really brightens them up, and I love the finish that it gives. Painting them would always be an option as well, but you can see how bright these look. I love kind of the almost natural wood color that this gives. It's going to be perfect for our little potting table that we're going to make here. Now I'm trying to keep this as much of Dollar Tree products as I can. I'm using some of the tumbling tower blocks. I want these to be the feet of my table, but I want them to be thicker than just one tumbling tower block. So I'm going to take some wood glue and hot glue, and I'm going to make them thicker so that way I can have a thicker base on there. You want to make sure to get these as even as possible so your table doesn't wobble at all. And I had started out using the clamps and realized I really didn't need to do that. I could just glue them with the wood glue and the hot glue and press them together really tightly with my fingers, and that would give me the bond that I needed. I would just have to hold it for a few seconds. I get asked a lot about using hot glue and wood glue together, and they're great to use together. It does not compromise either of the glue, the way that it adheres. The hot glue actually works as a temporary clamp while that wood glue dries, so it's totally fine to use those two together. Now I want to have these have a very rustic finish. I want the two layers of my table to have that natural wood color, and I want my legs to contrast with a white color, and I will distress them with some antiquing wax as well. Again, you could paint this or this in any colors that you wanted. Now, where these are picture frames, you can see that I'm just removing that little sawtooth hanger on the back there. I just used some pliers rather than unscrewing it, and it worked great to get that off. And then you can see I'm just going in just very lightly dry brushing. So dry brushing is just getting your brush, putting a little bit of your paint or your wax on it. In this case, I'm using antiquing wax, and I wipe most of it off. So it's just very, very light as you brush it up and down. It's just going to give that little aged look. Where this is going for a potting shed type of vibe here for this table. Obviously, I want to look like it has been used. It's rustic. And so that's why I'm going heavy with my distressing on this. That's again, just totally optional, just giving you some ideas of what you might like to do for your decor. But I feel like that very rustic look there really does add that farmhouse touch to it. Now I'm just using some hot glue to glue my Jenga blocks here, the tumbling tower blocks, as my feet to the table. Don't worry, I will come back in and remove that little barcode sticker off of there. At one point I realized that, I don't know, for some reason when you get in the zone and crafting, you don't even realize things like that until, minutes later you're going, oh, I can't believe I didn't do that. So now I'm just showing you that I cut some square dowels down, and you guys, I found some easels at Dollar Tree that would work perfect to use the legs off of that if you want to keep this all Dollar Tree. I cut mine to about 5.5 inches, rounded up to 6 inches. That would be fine. I was just trying to work with the length of the wood that I had. You could even go 5 inches. It just depends on how far apart you want your two levels, but I was just showing you that I did the 5.5 inches. Now I'm painting these to match those tumbling tower blocks. So I'll give each of these a coat of white paint. It takes about 2 coats, and then I will go back in with the antiquing wax here, as you can see, and I'm just distressing. I pay close attention to the edges of the dowels there because that's where you see that heavy antiquing wax come off of there, off of the brush onto the leg. And it really just makes it look dirty, which is what we're going for, right? It's a potting table, so we're going to go with it. And it just is that farmhouse look. And I really do love that chippy farmhouse style. These heat guns are absolutely fantastic to use with your putty knife to get those stickers off. You can see how easily those just pop right off of there. You just heat up that adhesive underneath those stickers. I just put my little putty knife there that I got from Dollar Tree, and it just comes right up. I did get this heat gun on Amazon. I'll link it below if you're interested in investing in one. I honestly didn't know how often I would use it because I always just used my hair dryer when I did crafting, but you guys, I use this in almost every single DIY. So if you're looking for something new to add to your crafting game, I would highly recommend one of those heat guns. So now I'm doing the same process with these square dowels as I did with our feet for the table, and I'm just using some hot glue. I just put a bunch of hot glue in the corners there, and then I placed those legs in, and that way I would get the bond that I needed to. Now, to have this glue to the top of our bottom layer, which you'll see what I mean here, I am using a little bit of wood glue with the hot glue to do this. The other table that I made, I did with hot glue. It has held up just great. So, I mean, this isn't going to get super heavy use. So I feel like the legs using just hot glue would be fine, but gluing it to that surface, this top layer to the second layer, I wanted a little bit more of a bond with that wood glue. So that's why I used a little bit of wood glue there. And you guys, look at how beautiful this table is. This is such a fun table. It's perfect. It's such a great and different take on a tiered tray. I get so many compliments on this table that I have. Like I said, this is a little bit of a smaller version of one that I made previous on my channel, but I get so many comments on this, and everybody just seems to love it because it's different than what you see everywhere. And I really think that it turned out beautiful, and you can use it all year long with all different seasons. I love picking up these tag-shaped signs at Dollar Tree. They're so fun to give a makeover to. So I'm just going to try and peel this front of this sign off here, which I feel like the majority of the time, this is exactly what happens. You think you're going to get it, and then it just rips, and there's no way to get the rest of it off. So I'm just cutting some craft paper down to size and just putting some hot glue around the edge, and then I will just lay that craft paper down on the top, and the front of the sign will now become the back of our sign. And what I do here is I'll just cut this paper down to size after I get it adhered, and then I just take my emery board and go around the edges to give it a nice, crisp, clear look. It gives it that clean edge so it looks like it was made to be that way. I'm just using a skewer to mark where the holes are on the back of my paper. And then I have this paper I got at Hobby Lobby. It looks like galvanized metal, and I thought it would be so cute to have this tag kind of have a galvanized feel. So the same process I did with the back, I just cut this down kind of to size, but on this side I'm using some Elmer school glue. This is the time of the year to pick this school glue up. You'll start seeing it in the school supply section, and it will go on a really good sale. Pick this stuff up. I love using it for these projects, and I've never had a project where like the glue, like the project has lifted up, if that makes sense. I've never had the paper come off or anything. So you can see I had to piece two pieces together there, and I'm just using my brayer to get this really down good to make sure that it's not going to come up or anything. And then the same process, I'll cut off the excess, and then I will go around and file the edges to give it that nice, crisp, clean look. Since we did the barbecue skewers through the backing, it is very easy to find where those holes are, so I'll just pull those through so I can add a hanging tag. And I have this cute little mason jar from Dollar Tree. This is a fairly new item, I believe. So I'm just removing their little bow that was on it so I can embellish it myself. And I use one of these little three-dimensional stickers that came from Dollar Tree. And now I'm just wrapping some twine around the top of it, and I just use some hot glue to make sure that sticks really well onto the back. I made this cute little finger bow out of twine and added some of the little Dollar Tree beads to the bottom of it. I thought that was super cute. Now just taking some tumbling tower blocks, I'm gluing these onto my sign, and I want this jar to fit at an angle on these. So I put some glue on the bottom of the jar so it can glue to the sign, and then I will have those tumbling tower blocks raise it up so I can change the florals in and out for different seasons, because I thought it would be kind of fun to make this so you could have it for different seasons of the year. So you can see how those florals just tuck right down into there. Now I just use some jute twine and feed it through those holes, and I tie some knots on the front. You could do like embellish this however you wanted. If you wanted like a beaded loop on there would be super cute, rope, anything like that. You wouldn't even have to put one on there. But there we have it. I think it turns out so cute. What do you guys think of this? And I love that I can switch those flowers out, and I really think that paper makes it look like galvanized metal on there. What do you guys think of this one? This was the perfect craft my stash item for me, and I have a bunch of Hobby Lobby clearance items that I just keep a big bin of. You guys know I'm a big fan of checking out that sale section at Hobby Lobby, and I had this sign that came from there that was like, I can't remember what the price tag just said on there, $1.50 or something. And then I have this candlestick, which is concrete. It was very heavy, and I knew when I bought it that I wanted to do some type of riser with it. So I'm just showing you guys, look, I'm actually measuring something. I don't measure anything, so I really had to point out that I actually tried with this one. I just found the center and then traced around that. Now I have this big long piece of trim. This just came from my hardware store. You can just buy it down where the like your baseboards, they'll have like trim on that aisle too. And I've made several projects out of using this. So I just cut it at a 45-degree angle. I measured the size that I needed, and I did just use my hand saw. I didn't use like a table saw or anything to do this. I just used my miter box, like little miter box table saw. Hand saw, excuse me, to do that, which I'll have linked down in my description box because I love using that. So, and it's very simple. And then I just measured these to be a little bit less than what the sign was because I wanted them to be a little bit of trim here because that is going to be the flat part of my riser. And then I just used some super glue to glue these down. Hot glue would probably work, but I just felt like super glue was going to give me a closer fit and it was going to work a little bit better over time. So that was why I chose to do that. Now the sign has a little bit of raised text, and this is the type of super glue that I work with all the time. So I'm just showing either of these. Now the sign had a little bit of a raised area. I should have sanded that off, but I didn't realize at the time it was going to be an issue. So I'm just pointing that out now. Now I'm just using some E6000 and some hot glue in the areas where the E6000 is not. So that can kind of give me the quick hold, and then the E6000 can dry and give me the permanent hold. Now, of course, as I'm gluing this on right now, I'm realizing that I forgot to take the price tags off of the back. So I do go in and take that off so you can't see it, but remove that beforehand. But for some reason, it just didn't dawn on me until after I glued it down, and I went, whoops. So I spray painted this outside because it's finally warm enough to spray paint at my house. And I'm just showing that on these edges here, we're going to put some antiquing wax to get in all of the little grooves of those pieces. Now, those trim pieces are completely optional. If you don't want to mess around with having to go get something extra, or you don't want to cut anything, I get it. Totally optional, just a different thing of decoration. I just kind of love embellishing things in different ways. So you can see that I put a pretty heavy coat of antiquing wax on this trim here and then wiped it off, so it just kind of helped pop all of those little nooks and crannies there. It kind of helps to see the detail. And then I do brighten up the top of it with a little bit of chalk paint dry brushing over it. And then here I'm just distressing the edges with some antiquing wax around the whole thing to kind of give it that aged look. So not just the trim was aged with the antiquing wax. So I just go around all of the edges. I also go around on the candlestick portion. I don't think I show that on here, but I did do that. So look at how absolutely darling this looks. I think this is beautiful. I really think that trim sets this off. Now I really wanted to do something extra here. So to put on the top of it, I've seen like rustic metal pieces on the top of risers. So I bought this at the wedding section at Hobby Lobby, which is the best kept secret Hobby Lobby has for crafters, is the wedding section. Always check there. This was like, I can't even remember how much it said, $1.50 I think it said on this little tin bucket here. And I'm using just some regular like white vinegar, just the kind you buy in the big jug. I use it like in my dishwasher to help my dishes, and some paper towels. I'm trying to age this. I've never done this process before, so this was totally new to me. So I soaked all of these paper towels very liberally in the vinegar, and I am just putting them all around the metal on here. And I read this on Pinterest to do this. I've also seen some other crafters do this on a smaller scale with like safety pins and bells and things. And so I'm just, like you can see here, I'm just going to set that down. And I did this, was probably about noon that I put this on here. And I came and checked this. This is probably about 5 in the afternoon or the evening. And you can see how much rust is showing on here now and how it's dulled down that shininess on here. And I decided at this point that I want a little more rust. I mean, you could easily leave it like this, but I mean, this is like 5 to 6 hours or something. So I put it all back on. and then I leave it overnight. So if you really want it to be really rusty, do this and leave it for 24 hours and see what happens here. So this is the next day. I'm taking this out, and you can see the paper towels are showing like tons of rust there, and you can see how aged that gets. Now I think because I placed the paper towels so close to it that maybe if I'd let a little oxygen get in there, the reaction might have happened a little bit more on the things. But I mean, I'm extremely happy for my first time with how this came out, and it was such a fun process to do. It does smell like vinegar, so keep it in your garage if it's gonna bother you. Mine was just in my basement, and really I couldn't smell it unless I was right next to it. So I'm cleaning off the bottom because my intention was to glue it to the top of this riser. And this is what I would have used to do that, and some hot glue for the temporary hold, and then either super glue or E6000 for that permanent hold. But I decided not to do that. So I'm just showing you that that's how you would glue it on. But I thought the versatility would be much greater to leave it not glued to it. So here it is just on its own. It's darling. It definitely has that farmhouse look. I mean, I'm thinking next, I'm like, I want to get a big Rubbermaid bin to do this in with some watering cans or something. But here it is on top of the riser. I think it looks darling on there. What do you guys think of this process? Is that something that you would try? If you have a stash or pick up these little pallets from Dollar Tree's crafting area and wonder what to do with them, I have the best DIY for you here. This is by far my favorite Dollar Tree DIY ever. So I am using 9 of these, and I'm going to make a tray with them. So I'm just using a combination of wood glue and super glue, just the super glue and wood glue I got from Dollar Tree. And I'm just kind of alternating. The super glue gives it more of a like quick hold, if that makes sense here, while it lets the wood glue dry. So that's why I decided to use that. I don't love using hot glue in instances like this where I need the pieces to fit together tight, because I feel like sometimes the hot glue will dry in between and they'll kind of be like a space or something. So I'm just using these, and I glue 3 together end to end, and then I do that for each of my 3 rows. So that will take care of all 9 of my little pallets here. And so as you can see, I have all 3 rows done here, and then I'm just using to kind of space my wood glue out there and kind of fill in the gaps with the super glue, and I will glue these 3 rows together using the same method here. To get these to fit together very securely, I am using some clamps. You can sit and hold them for that super glue to dry, but I found that the clamps worked the best. These 4 wooden signs are from Dollar Tree also, and I'm using them for the edges of our tray. And I'm just showing you here that this bottom is very secure. It is not going to fall apart. So now I just need to measure the edges so I know exactly where to mark on all of my signs to cut. Now you can use a handsaw or a miter saw, whatever you use to cut. And then I did drill a couple of holes in these. And as you can see, I ended up having to use a little bit of spackling because it's like a compressed wood. It's not like solid wood, if that makes sense. And so it kind of tore a little bit when my drill went through. So just a little spackling over that. Now I just use my super glue and my wood glue to glue those sides down first. And then I am going to glue these other edges, the front and back in. And if you saw me there, I made sure to put super glues on the edge of those pieces as well as the bottom part, so that way all of my surfaces that are touching are well glued together. Now at first I was just going to do one base coat of chalk paint because all of those signs are different colors, and I was kind of using this as a primer coat, and then I was going to spray paint it. I ended up just doing the whole thing with chalk paint in my studio, and I really do like how it turned out. But just know that you have to go in between each of these palettes with a little detail brush to make sure that those are all painted in between. So it takes a little bit of love and effort and time here. Spray paint may do a little bit quicker of a job for you, but I'm just letting you know how it was. But I'm so pleased with how this came out. I'm so happy that I did take the time to do this. So just that little detail brush in between each of those. Now I do decide to distress mine because you guys know I love that. That is totally my style. And when I've seen these in the store, they have had kind of that distressed finish. So I'm just using some antiquing wax on a chip brush. I will dip my antiquing wax in, and then I will wipe it off a little bit on a paper towel, and then just lightly brush over the areas there. So I did the inside of my tray first, and then I go through on all of the edges and make sure that they're well covered as well. You just want to make sure that if you're doing a distressing finish like this, you want to make sure all of the areas are covered. So the inside of the tray, the outsides of the tray, outside sides, if that makes sense here. And then I kind of go along the edges like I'm doing right here. I feel that that gives a little bit of definition to the edges as well and really helps it to look really good. And I just love how it turns out. Now I'm using a little bit of the rope from Dollar Tree, and I am just going to put a little painter's tape on the edge so I can feed it through where I drilled my holes. If you didn't want to drill holes on here, you could easily super glue some like door handles or something onto the edge of this. If you don't have like the tools or don't feel comfortable using a drill or anything like that, just go to the craft store or hardware store and find a couple of drawer pulls and just use some super glue on the sides. Would work easily as well. But I just tie the rope in knots on either end there and then just pull it tight against, as you saw, I pulled it through to help that knot get really tight, and then just cut off the excess. And then I just repeat the same process on the other side. After I got my handles on and picked this tray up, I was instantly in love. I think this is going to be so fun to style. I love how this turns out. I think that it is such a solid piece, you guys. It's not flimsy at all. And I've seen these in different craft stores. I mean, look how cute it is standing up like this. Like, I just think it is so cute. But I've seen these in craft stores that go for like lots more than it cost me to make this. And it took a little bit of time, but it is a piece that is going to be a staple for me for years to come. And I am so excited to get to style it in different ways and come up with different places to put it. I would love to know down in the comments what you guys think of this one and if this is something that you would attempt. In my stash, I have several of these tags. I feel like a lot of times they come from Christmas time. I've noticed Dollar Tree starting to carry some blank ones for you to use. This one I think came from Dollar General, but I made a tag a couple of years ago on my channel with a beaded garland, and it has honestly been one of the most popular DIYs on my channel. So I thought I would kind of do a different take or an update on just a cute little tag to have for your decor, whether you use it into your trays, whether you just use it as an accent piece, but that's what I'm doing here. Now, the paper didn't tear off the front of this as easily as some of the other ones I've had, so I'm just using a little bit of water and I'm just kind of moving that around with my finger and my putty knife. This is just getting all of that glue and residue off so I have a completely clean surface to work with. And then I'm just going to give this a basic coat of white paint. Now, as I was doing this, I took some of this paper here and I started kind of distressing it with that to give some texture to it. I really like that, kind of like almost like a wet distressing here. And then my putty knife as well, I kind of use that to kind of rough it up because I like that look. If you're not a fan of that, then you'll just skip that step. Now, in my stash, I have a lot of chalk couture things. There's some information down in my description box if you're curious about chalk couture, but it's just kind of like screen printing or stenciling. So I'm just taking, this is some script that I have here, and I love this. I thought this would be really cute. I love kind of that script in the background on some pieces. And so you first put it on your little fuzzy mat there, and it's going to help it so it doesn't tear your paint up when you rip it off. I'm sure we've all been there with like Cricut or something when you peel up that transfer paper and it tears half your paint up. So it just kind of stops that from happening. So once I decided the position I wanted this script to be, I wanted it kind of be a little bit at an angle. I thought that looked really cool. I'm just taking a light blue color here and I'm just scraping it on and then just kind of cleaning it up here with the chalk paste. And then you'll just peel that back to reveal your design. And I thought that looked so lovely. I really like how this turned out here. And then these also came in the same collection. You could do whatever you wanted. If you have don't have chalk couture pieces, the transfer stuff from Dollar Tree would work really, really good. I know at the craft stores in the scrapbook section, you can buy kits that have all of the different like 3D embellishments and things. I mean, just use your creativity. This is just to give you inspiration here. I really loved the postage stamp on here, and I loved that it said number 34 because I don't know how Cricut, or not Cricut, but Chalk Couture knew this, but 34 is like my lucky number. I don't know why, but that's just been a number that's kind of stuck with me. So I thought it was perfect to use on this. So, you know, if it has no significance to you, that's great. But it did to me when I saw it. I thought, okay, I'll try that. So I thought I would put a little ticking stripe on the bottom because it needed something a little extra. And when I did that, I felt like the top of it needed something too. So I'm just using some washi tape from Dollar Tree and using that as my barrier there so I could have these crisp lines. And I just did the top in the gray. Now I have these beaded garlands here and I'm trying to decide to do the darker or the lighter. Now I chose to do the darker, so it's a matter of personal preference. I buy these at Hobby Lobby. They usually have them at fall and Christmas time, and they're like meant for, you know, garlands or things like that, these beaded garlands here. And I buy them when they're 40% off. They end up being $6. It's the cheapest way to buy beads, plus they're already strung for you. So you can see I didn't have to string any of these. I just cut it off. I'll take the extra beads that I took off there so I could tie these off, and I will put those just in my bead jar, so I'll have some extra if I need them. And then I'm just taking the end that was already tied for me there. It's a loop, and I just stick that through the tag there and pull the beads right through. And that's what's going to fix this to my tag there. And then of course I thought it would be fun to do a tassel on the end. So I'm just taking a piece of wood and wrapping my twine around it. I do it about 20 times or so. Just depends on how thick you want your tassel. Also the piece of wood, the larger it is, the longer your tassel is going to be. So keep that in mind as well. And I just slide that off of the wood there, and then I'm just deciding where I want to make the neck. I've learned that there's the neck of the tassel, and the top part is called like the head of the tassel. And so I stick just a little stencil brush through there to create where that neck and the head of the tassel are. And then I just wrap the twine around, so that way I can make sure I have a big enough loop in the head of the tassel there. And then you just cut the ends off there. And I'm just tying this onto the end of the beaded garland, and you just want to make sure to get the ends as even as possible. I'll straighten them out and trim them, and then I'll put them in a different position, straighten them out and trim them so you can get as flat of edge on the tassel-y pieces there. And then I like to put water on mine. My sprayer wasn't working, so I just dumped the water on here, which worked fine as well. And I just flatten it out, let it dry, and then you can fluff it up. But I think this turns out so cute. This is going to be perfect, a little accent piece. I love having these as a piece of texture in my decor, and hopefully you guys like this tag as much as you liked my other tag. I would love to know your thoughts on this down in the comments.
This bucket came from Dollar Tree, and it has this really cool embossed, like pressed tin look to it. And I'm just removing the sticker from the base there, and I thought this would be really fun to kind of match my home decor. I wanted to kind of have it look just very rustic, like it had been sitting out for a long time. Hopefully that's what I achieve here, but I'm just taking my white chalk paint. I feel like chalk paint is going to be your best option on this rather than acrylic paint, simply because of that shiny color, or the shiny texture finish that the pot already has on it. You're going to want to use that chalk paint, or at least sand it if you're using acrylic paint. So it takes me a couple of coats to get the coverage that I want. Now this is the fun part of projects like this, is you can paint them to match your home decor. So I'm going neutral because I feel like that appeals to a wider audience. However, different colors would be so fun to do if you have different things that you're wanting to try to match or things like that. I feel like the colors that they came in were really pretty. There was like a green color and a blue color that I saw. However, I felt that they just didn't quite match my decor, and so it's so fun to see items like this and be able to pick them up, bring them home, and match them to your decor. Now, after I get all of the layers of the paint dry, it took me about 3 coats with my chalk paint. I'm just taking some antiquing wax. And you guys, any type of antiquing wax will work just fine. You just want to make sure that it's a water-based antiquing wax. There's several different brands at several different craft stores. Any of them are going to work just fine for you. But I'm just giving this a good coat on here. You can do this as light or as heavy as you want. I really felt like with that pressed tin that is the finish on this, that this antiquing wax is going to go down into all of the little grooves and everything. So after I get all of this covered completely, you can see I have the entire thing covered with this antiquing wax. I also, as you can see here, I forgot to mention that I did paint about 2 inches down on the top of the pot there, and then I also did go in and finish that with some antiquing wax, just so if you were to see inside of the plant that I put in here, you don't see that blue color. You could paint the entire inside if you wanted, but it's not necessary. You can see I'm just taking a baby wipe. I feel like that is the best. A wet paper towel would work just fine. I just don't have. Anyway, long story short, I just keep baby wipes next to my crafting table because it is easy, and I buy them in bulk. And I use them all the time as I craft. But I'm just going to wipe away not all of the antiquing wax, but a lot of it, leaving behind all of the little nooks and crannies are going to have that nice little antiquing wax, and it's going to give it a nice little look like it's aged there. I do the same thing on the inside of the pot. Now, what I'll do here, because this is what's fun about antiquing wax when you're doing this process, is if it's a little too dark for you, you're just going to take a little bit of your original color on your brush here and just go over the top lightly. This is just going to hit all of those raised areas and give them that nice bright color of paint, like that bright white on there. And I'll go over the entire bucket here or pail, and it really, really does help brighten those raised areas, and it keeps that antiquing wax in those pressed areas to have that really aged look to it. Now, I know that some people will comment on why I left the bottom. I did go back and paint the bottom. As you can see here, I also went in with some antiquing wax just to make sure that all of it was covered. Again, if you want to do the inside, you can, but if you're going to have a potted plant inside of it like this, you don't necessarily need that. I think this looks absolutely beautiful. It looks aged, it looks rustic. It does not look like it came from Dollar Tree. It looks like something you would get in a high-end store. I think this turned out beautiful, and this is a staple that you can use all year long. Dress it up for different seasons, change your greenery that's in there for the different seasons. I think this is absolutely beautiful. What do you guys think of this one?
For this project, you just need any type of sign blank. I love checking Hobby Lobby because I feel like I get the best deals there and like wonderful sized signs. So that's where I got this one from. I am trying to sand the letters off just by hand, and they are not budging. And I really wanted a natural wood look to this. So I take it out, and it is so hard to film one-handed while you're sanding something, but I'm just using like my big sander that's what I had to end up using to get those letters off of there. And then I just cut this image out on my Cricut, and I'm kind of making a stencil. And I got it from Silhouette's design studio, so I will go ahead and link that down, so if you wanted to find it there, you could, and then you can size it to whatever size your background is. But I just placed it down like a stencil. So I just reverse weeded it and then laid that down on my surface here. And then I am just pouncing with a little bit of paint up and down all over the stencil. Now you can kind of see at the top, my B didn't transfer the best. And then I have one of the words that didn't. So I'll go back in and redo those after I get everything else done. So I'm just going through and lightly pouncing, letting that paint dry, and then I will peel that up. And there are a couple of areas that I have to go in and just take the rest of that stencil up, like, you know, in the middle of my O's and everything like that, so you can kind of see there how that process is. And then I'm just doing the little word raw there because it didn't transfer, or the stencil didn't work the best, and I redid my cute little B at the top there, which I think is just absolutely darling. You can always try using water slide decal paper or using printing on tissue paper to do a sign like this. I am just going in and de-stressing it with some sand to kind of make all of the writing and the stencil look a little bit aged and blend in with that wood surface that I did, how it looks very distressed. I just think this turned out so cute. I love this sign. It's like the perfect distressing amount, and I love the wood finish on it as well. I think it turned out really cute. What do you guys think of this cute sign? Do you guys remember when I made this Gothic window? It was about a year ago when I made it. I'll leave a link to the video down in my description box, but I wanted to make one that was a little bit of a different shape and had a little bit of a different size to it and a different design in it. So that's what I'm going to tackle today. I found an image on Canva. You can find them on Google Images. You can purchase window designs on Etsy, and I just printed it out across multiple pages. I used an app called Split Print on my MacBook, and it does cost about $5 for the app, but you get to do as many times as you would like to, as many different designs like this. Whereas if I was to pay for an engineering print, I would have to pay every time that I did it. So I thought it was a decent investment. So I just cut my design out on the, like a right angle. You can see kind of on the side and the bottom of my window, and I'm just using some Gorilla Spray adhesive. Be very careful with this stuff. It does get to be very sticky. I just put a light coat here, and then I will place the straight edge of the side of the window and of the base of the window against, so that way I know that those two sides right there are going to be completely straight. I just rub out any air pockets, get that adhered really well, and then just using my drill with a large enough drill bit that my jigsaw blade will fit through. I just drill what are called pilot holes in each of like the window openings. So you can see how each of those window areas have one there. So I can stick that blade of my jigsaw down through there. Now, if you've never used a jigsaw before, never fear. I'm here to hopefully calm your fears a little bit. That window that you saw at the beginning of my video was the very first time I had ever used a jigsaw. They are very easy to use. I was really nervous the first time I used one that it was going to be like more than I could handle. It was going
going to go so fast and I was not going to be in control. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You have complete control. You have a little trigger that you'll press with your finger on the handle, and you get to control how fast you go or how slow that you go. So it is very easy. You get the hang of it very, very quickly. Once I started to use my jigsaw, literally my creating world exploded with possibilities of different things that I could do. So if you have one at your home, or if you have thought about purchasing one before, this one is one that plugs in. You can see I have a cord on it. I think I paid about $60 for it. So it is a little bit of an investment. They do have lesser price models, but I was given the advice to spend a little bit extra for a little bit nicer one because it is a little smoother. So I can't tell you what the other ones feel like, but this one is really nice and it is very easy to use. I always wear my safety glasses when using any of my power tools. I do, however, like to wear some earplugs when I am doing my jigsaw. This project from beginning to totally the end probably took about an hour and a half, and that's with painting it and everything. So the cutting out process took maybe like 45 minutes or so, not super long. Once you get going, it moves fairly quickly. You can just see that you have to stick your blade in those pilot holes and kind of work your way up to the lines on the window there. And my window, you can see the frame has that little area that I didn't cut that little white area out in my frame. I decided to have a thick frame. So I'm just cutting along the outside of it. So I'm just going up around the exterior of my window right now. And then you'll be able to see that as I go back up on this other side that I'm just holding on to the window with my other hand. So that way when I make the last cut and it kind of breaks free, you'll be able to see here in just a moment. It doesn't fall on the ground and break or anything. I'm just holding on to it, so I will be able to catch that. So you'll see here as I get to that point, the window comes loose and I'm able to just have that with my hand. And so easy. Now, when you have your jigsaw, it's got that trigger on it. So when you're pushing it, it goes. And as soon as you let go, your jigsaw stops. So you have total control over that. So now I'm just kind of peeling off this paper. If you need to use like a wet sponge or anything or sand it off, you can. Now, when you first cut it out, you're like, this looks kind of ugly. Like the cuts are not super straight, but that's what you want. You want this window to look like it was carved out of wood. So you're just going to soften all of those cuts with a sander. I recommend using an electric sander on this. You could use a block sander, but it would take a lot of time. But I'm just going around all of the edges, kind of rounding them off a little bit. Again, we want this window to look like it was carved out of wood and maybe has just sat around and been aged for a long time. So I sand both sides of it. Every little area that was cut with the jigsaw, I sand. And then I just take this into my studio and I'm just going to give it a couple of coats of white chalk paint. This is the fun part because you can tailor this to what your decor needs are, or how you want to decorate it. You'll just do front and back, and then you have to remember to go inside all of those little areas as well. So now I'm going to make just a little window seal. So I am just taking one of the 5-gallon paint stir sticks from the hardware store and I'm just marking it off where I want. I'm just using my little miter box there to cut that off with, and then I'm just sanding the edges on it so it matches, and I put some wood glue along the base of that. Now I had not painted the base of that, so it's like, you know, the bare wood touching bare wood, and I'm just clamping that as I go through and distress this. So just using, I'm a big fan of fingernail files because of the detail that they can, little spaces they can get into. So whatever you use to sand with, I just go around all of the edges. Takes a couple of minutes to do this, but it's just going to knock some of the paint off just to make it look aged, because that is what we're going for. And then using some mineral paint, which is very close to that original color of the MDF board that is sticking through there, you'll just go ahead and dry brush it on to kind of give a little bit more distress. Now you could skip sanding completely and use that mineral paint if you would like to. So I have this cute little wreath, and this is what I intended to do with this window. Is I wanted to add a little bit of greenery onto my wall, but I wanted a cute little design behind it. So I just took this wreath and I fed through some twine on there and just tie that onto the window itself. When I hang this, I will just stick a couple of nails where the little crossbars are at the top of my window, so it will rest on those, but you could easily add hardware onto the back. I would love to know what your guys' thoughts on this window is. I absolutely love them. I love making them. It's such a fun project. It is a great beginner's project for a jigsaw. Find someone that knows how to use power tools if you're kind of scared to use them, and have them kind of help you. It only takes 1 or 2 times of using them with someone there for you to get that confidence and be able to make these projects. But I'm so excited to hang this, and I absolutely loved how it turned out. It would even be cute to just have sitting like this, resting against something. You wouldn't even have to hang it.
They have these darling little plaques or little sign blanks at Dollar Tree, and then this is from Hobby Lobby in the wedding section. However, Dollar Tree sells little frames, so feel free to use whatever little vintage frame that you would like to, or vintage looking frame. Now I'm just removing the sticker from the back of this sign, and I'm just sanding it down, and while I'm doing that, I figure I will sand the front of it. Mostly because when you pick up things from Dollar Tree, there can be scratches on them, or they can look pretty ununiform with how distressed they are. So I wanted to just kind of get out any blemishes. I wanted any distressing to be intentional and be what I put there. So I'm just going to go over all of this, the ridges, everything, and just kind of brighten this up and give it a really good uniform look. On this little frame here, I'm just going to remove the back completely because I'm not going to need it. I'm going to be gluing it onto this other sign blank that we have, and I'll just remove the pieces inside of it there because I don't need those. It's just like a little plastic film on the inside of it, not glass or anything. And then I'm just going to lightly brush over this with some white chalk paint here to kind of brighten it up so it has a good contrast to the back piece that I'm using, that wood piece, and I thought the white would be a really good contrast depending on what color your background is. You could easily do like a vintage metal look to this, would be really cute. But I'm just going over all of the sides. I have just a little bit of paint on my brush here, and just going over all of those edges and details. It really picks that up, and I think it really gives it a nice look. Now I'll just give you a little peek at my creative process here. A lot of times when I'm wanting to use some scrapbook paper or something, I will try a few things, kind of set it up, see how it looks, see what I like. That galvanized metal paper I love, but it did not really pop well with the frame. And I do like the look of this leather paper, and I felt like the darker one was the best option, so that's what I end up going with. And then I just have some rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree. This is one they've had for a little while, and I've just kind of cut some of the little pieces out of this to put on here, and I just kind of haphazardly just make a collage of some of these vintage looking things. Now you could easily put an actual photo in here, a vintage photo of a family member. It would be absolutely beautiful. A drawing, anything. I mean, the possibilities are endless here. This is just something that I did to kind of go for this vintage farmhouse look. And I'm just using some hot glue around the back of the sign here, and I will just place this paper on here. You can see I place it down and then place the frame so I can center it how I want it centered there and see what I'm doing. Now I have this little key from Dollar Tree here, and at first I thought I was maybe going to put it on there, and then I thought no, it actually looks cuter off to the side. So this is where I'm going to end up gluing it, is right there, and I thought that looked really cute. Just another little element there, kind of adds that vintage tone. So I just use a little bit of hot glue, and I just put that on the back of the key, and then I just place that back down kind of how I want it. Make sure it gets a good firm hold there, and I just thought that was a really cute contrast to bring that wood tones to the front of the piece where it matches the tones on the back as well. Now I'm just using a tumbling tower block to glue onto the back of my little frame here. If you want to put a little bit of cardboard or poster board or something on the back, cardstock even, to give that a little bit more heftiness rather than just the paper there. My cardstock paper was pretty, or my scrapbook paper was pretty decent, so I felt that it held okay, but just know that you're feel welcome to put a little cardboard there if you want to kind of beef that up a little bit. And then I'm just spinning this around to kind of get it as straight as I can while that glue is still hot, so I can manipulate the position of it there. Now, the frame itself looks absolutely darling on that back, but I thought it would be really fun to add a little bit of greenery. This is just the boxwood that comes from Walmart. I pulled off, I think I ended up using 6 pieces in total. I have 4 here, but then quickly decided I needed a little bit more. And I'm just putting a little bit of glue on that. And if you guys have watched my channel, you know I love to make 3D signs like this. And this one's a little different because I don't go around the entire edge of the frame. I'm just doing it on the diagonal. But I love popping out that frame or your centerpiece and giving a little bit of space, and then tucking some greenery in behind it. I think it really adds such a darling element. It gives it some texture. It's something unique and different that you don't see all of the time, but I really do think it looks really nice. So you can see here I'm just kind of struggling for a minute there to get this little piece in here. But I just glue all of those in behind and then hold them, and I do the same thing on the bottom to match it so they match on the diagonal. If you have a problem with any little hot glue like webbies or wispies or anything, I just use my heat gun to blast those. Be very careful with your boxwood that you don't melt it, but this gets rid of any of those little stringy hot glue things that we all absolutely hate as crafters. This is a great way to kind of get them just kind of melt away into thin air. But look at how beautiful this little sign looks. I just think this is adorable. And I feel like if you really did have like a vintage photo in here of somebody in your family or something, how beautiful would that be? How fun would it be to have a vintage picture in here of like your great grandma and give it to your mom or your grandma or something as a cherished keepsake? I think this turns out beautiful regardless of the picture that you put in the center there. I think that this is such a lovely way to display a cute little frame, and I think it has that really rustic and farmhouse touch. What do you guys think of this one? Are you a fan of this one?
With this DIY, I did pull out my Cricut and decide to kind of design a little bit of a graphic to make a sign with. I kind of got my inspiration from a bunch of different ones I looked at on Etsy and Google Images. There are a lot of fun templates on Etsy and also through Cricut Design Space or the Silhouette Studio, the design studio there. So you can definitely look at those places. If I can figure out how to start sharing the things that I design in my Cricut Design Space, I will definitely let you know. I have not figured out, or if you have any tips on that, definitely let me know down in the comments. But I just did this with some basic Cricut fonts that come in Design Space. And then this sign blank I got at Hobby Lobby. It was just $3 or $4, and it's I just think the quality of it is so good. And it's just a couple dollars more than like the signs that you get at Dollar Tree, but it's ready to go. You don't have to paint over it. You don't have to sand anything down, rip anything off or anything like that, or put scrapbook paper down. It's already distressed like this. It's got that cute whitewash on the back and then the darling little frame. And then the tie is already attached to it, like the little twine hanger on there. So I cut down my transfer paper to size so I can fit that in the middle and get it centered as best as I can. And then I'm just going to use my scraper to scrape that down. I'm just using a hotel key because that's all I can find, because honestly, I think I've probably thrown my scraper away. Have you guys ever done that you finally just figure that you've probably thrown them away with a bunch of garbage or something? I haven't found it in months. So anyway, I'm going to take some chalk paint and dry brush it over the vinyl. I love the way that looks. It gives it a weathered look. The matte finish of the chalk paint kind of dulls down. Even with matte vinyl, I feel like the matte chalk paint even dulls it down a little bit more and makes it look a little bit like it is painted on there, or part of the sign, if you will. So I just do that, and I just think this turned out so cute. Those little farm trucks are so popular right now, and I just thought it would be so fun with the little lemons to kind of do a little bit of a take on that. All right, here it is all finished. I think this turned out so cute. I think it is going to be the perfect little sign to add to my lemon display.
Every once in a while, you need a DIY or a craft or a flip that is super quick and easy, but turns out absolutely darling. And this is exactly that. I picked this tag up at Hobby Lobby's clearance. It was like less than $2. But you guys, Dollar Tree has tags, and so does Dollar General. You can get tags anywhere to make cute little signs like this, but I loved that it had the ticking stripe already on it, and I wanted to try and save that. And I also wanted to save this twine because it was a very good quality of twine, and I love how they had it tied. And so it was just a matter of untying it, and then I was able to pull that off. Now on the back side of this, there was quite a few stickers on there, so I just used my heat gun to zap those and get those off. And then I'm just sanding off the word kitchen. Now this is black paint that this is painted on with, and so it's going to maybe not sand the best, but that is the best way I could think of to get this off of here. And I was just trying to avoid that ticking stripe because I really just wanted to leave it on there. Like I said, I wanted to do as like the most minimal on this, but make it look very different than it did in the beginning. Kind of have the same vibe, but I just didn't need it to say kitchen. So I'm just very carefully taking my brush. This is just some white chalk paint that I have on here. And I'm just going to very carefully go up to that ticking stripe and then paint down towards the tie on the sign there on the little tag. That way I can keep that ticking stripe and I can cover it up with that paint. And I do go over all of the sides as well and just recoat this with that paint. And it was close enough to the same color that I didn't have to worry about the lines on the ticking stripe. After it dried, I did just rough it up with my emery board here. I went around the edges because I wanted it to have that nice farmhouse worn vibe to it, that look. And you can see I'm just going along all of the edges here as well, just to kind of sand down that paint. There's something so satisfying to me about distressing items like this and having it look. I know it's definitely a matter of personal preference, so you're just going to do what works for you when you're doing items like this. But for some reason, when I start distressing those edges and you can kind of see some character come out in the pieces, I just feel like they come to life. Now this is a rub-on transfer from Dollar Tree, and it was a little long for the tag, and I'd had this in mind thinking this is what I wanted to use, but when I pulled it out, you can see clearly it was a little bit too long. So I thought, well, maybe if I cut it up and kind of, it had a curve to it, so I wanted the curve to look good on there. And this does look cute. If I had gone this direction, I think that would have been fine, but when I was looking at it, it just didn't feel right to me. And so I thought, okay, I'll save that for another project. I have a bunch of different Dollar Tree rub-on transfers, so I pulled them all out and I found this one that said welcome home. And when I placed it on there and it had that little line between the welcome and the home, it was just perfect with that ticking stripe. I thought that I had found exactly what it needed to be. So I just placed that on there. I line it up to get it as straight as I can. You can always use a ruler if you like to get things exactly straight. I feel like I do a pretty good job just kind of eyeballing it, but I'm just using just a little piece of wood here, like a crafting stick or something like that, to rub this on. It comes on, or it rubs on extremely easy, and you just go back and forth until that design is completely, and you can see as you're rubbing it transferring onto your surface, so you'll know when to peel it back. After I peeled that back, I took my little piece of wood here and I just kind of made a couple little scratches into it to kind of give it a little bit of a different aged look. Again, I don't know that I would do that again if I was to make this over, but it just, in the moment, it felt like something I wanted to do, so I just went with it. And now I'm just taking my brush that I used to paint the tag. The paint in it was fairly dry, and I'm just going over that rub-on transfer. That's going to make it look a little bit aged. It's not going to be so shiny. It's going to look like it was printed directly onto this tag here. And I also go over the ticking stripe as well to give it a little bit of a worn look. And then I'm just going to re-put on this twine here. You guys, this is so simple. I mean, I just fed it back through and tied it exactly the way that it came. That's all it took for this simple little flip. I think it turned out darling. You guys are going to have to let me know down in the comments what you think of this one, because I really love this thicker tag. I think it turned out beautiful. But I think the thin tags that you get like at Dollar Tree or Dollar General, you could make something super cute as well. Embellish it however you want, and it's going to be perfect to have as a little accent piece in my decor.
I love the look of this little frosted glass lantern from Kirkland's and thought I could easily recreate something similar with this glass little jar that I found at Dollar Tree. Now this does have this little twine around the top of it, and so I'm going to leave that rather than try to find anything, since it's all kind of like a one-stop shop thing with this, if that makes sense. So I'm just using my little heat tool to remove that sticker from the bottom, and then I'm just going to wipe it off and get it all cleaned up. I will also take this little twine off now because I'm going to frost the glass on this little lantern. I will be replacing that once this process is done. So there is a little bit of glue on the sides of the lip of the jar there, so I just use my heat tool to get that completely cleaned off, so that way the glass is completely clean. To frost this, I'm just using this Rust-Oleum frosted glass spray. I have never used this before, so this was the first time, and I absolutely love the process. I just took this out into my little spray paint studio in my garage. It's just a giant box that I have so it doesn't get all over everything. And I just give this about 3 really light coats. I just go in just a typical spray paint motion, you know, just little small bursts, stay about 12 inches away. Let it thoroughly dry in between each layer. This is so satiny. The finish is so beautiful
It is so smooth, and I love how this turns out. This is definitely a hit, and I will be using this frosted glass from Rust-Oleum much more often. This is not sponsored or anything by them. I just ended up really liking this product. So I'm just going to replace this little twine back on here, and I am going to have that little handle, get that put into place as well. So I just use a little bit of glue. That's how it was originally affixed to the jar. So after I kind of get all of my measurements down here, I don't really measure anything. You guys know that. I just kind of eyeball it, and then I'm just going to hot glue where I want the pieces to be, and then I will be able to have that little handle to hang my lantern from. After I have glued into place where my little handle is, I'm just going to wrap around the rest of that twine, and I will just kind of tuck the pieces under and glue that. You can kind of watch how I do that here if you decide to recreate this. Now, if you want to go for the same vibe and you don't want to spray paint it, you could easily just go look for this lantern at Dollar Tree. It would be super cute. Of course, I found that on Kirkland's, and then I saw this at Dollar Tree and thought, oh my gosh, this is the perfect opportunity to try and frost glass, since I've never actually done that, and I just love how it turns out. But you can kind of see I'm just going to tuck that back under. Now, I could have easily gone and thought of something else to do to make more of a wood type of handle on this, but I thought it was just easier to do it this way, and I got the same feel and the same look from this. So now I'm just going to take a couple of these little tea lights. These also came from Dollar Tree. You just pull the little tab out and they light up, and I end up putting 2 of them in there to add a little bit more light. Here's a quick look at our inspiration piece that was from Kirkland's, and then here is the piece that I recreated. I really think this turned out great. You're going to get that same feel and that same vibe from this lantern. I love how that frosted spray paint turned out, and this really was just a couple of dollars, which is a fraction of the price from the original Kirkland's version. What do you guys think of this? Do you like how it turned out? Would you try that frosted glass after seeing this? I loved how it turned out. Are you guys on Instagram? If you are, I would love if you would come and find me. I am Farm Charm Chic over there. I'll leave a link down in my description box so you can easily find me. But come and see what I'm working on. I post there quite a bit. I like to show you things that I'm working on or when I have videos ready. It's just another place to stay in touch. So if you do come find me, remember to send me a DM and say hi, because I do love meeting new friends. I have been loving these little succulent displays I have been seeing. This one is from Kirkland's, and it will be our inspiration piece. Now, you may, if you've watched me, remember this piece from Easter time that I created. I had this little drawer that I found at Hobby Lobby on clearance, but you can use any container that you might have, such as this one from Dollar Tree. I have even seen these dowels are everywhere. I have a good link on Amazon. I'll leave down there for you to find them inexpensively, but I've seen a lot of different displays in those. Even these little boxes that you may have seen like in your thrift store or from floral arrangements. I have a video where I redid that one. I can leave the link to that as well. But I'm just going to use this piece from Easter so I can have it be more of a year-round piece. So I'm just going to remove these eggs that I had put on barbecue skewers. Now, if I decide to, at Easter time, slip these eggs back into this piece, I can easily do that. So I'm just taking a bunch of different succulents that I have. Now, these came from a combination of Dollar Tree, Amazon, and Hobby Lobby. I'm going to start with this taller piece right here because I feel like that kind of gives a little bit of height, so I'm starting with that. And then I also have this one, I think this is called like string of pearls or something in the succulents world. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just going to slip this down here in this corner kind of opposite from where my height is to kind of give a little bit of drooping and swoopness, if that, like coming down, cascading over, if that makes sense. I felt like that gave a really good balance. Now, I am by no means a florist, an arranger of florals or anything. You guys know that I kind of just do what looks good and what's pleasing to my eye, and that is what is so wonderful about this is you really can't do anything wrong. As long as you're doing it to what you like, you're going to do a fantastic job. I'm not hot gluing anything into this arrangement right now, so I can change it out if I decide to. This little box does have a layer of styrofoam that I glued in there. In fact, I'll leave a link in my description box of the original video so you can see how I set this box up with the styrofoam if you're interested in that. But if I do want to replace those eggs or anything else in there, I can take these out, or I can switch things around if I want to. Now, if you guys have never heard me talk about succulents, I always pick some up at Dollar Tree. Their succulents for $1 is great. However, on Amazon, you can find the most beautiful succulents that ends up being about $1.25 to $1.50 per piece of succulents, which now that Dollar Tree is $1.25, it makes it much more comparable in price to those, but they are so much more realistic. And like the string of pearls that I got that is drooping over the edge was part in one of the packages that I got. You get some really good different variations. So I'll leave a link to that as well if you're looking for some really good alternative to Dollar Tree succulents, because I feel like you get the same like 4 or 5 different pieces there. It's really hard to find some of the different variations. And in the packages you get on Amazon, you get a lot, and I feel like it's very comparable in price. Just make sure that you're turning your box or your little container all the way around. Get it from a 360 view to get all of those spaces filled in. Now here is a look again at the Kirkland's version, and here is a look at the version that I recreated. I love this. I love the fresh feeling that it has. And honestly, like this maybe was about $25 to recreate, but the original pieces I have seen go for well over $100 to $200 depending on how big they are. What do you guys think of this? Do you like the succulent arrangements like this? They are becoming one of my most favorites. I love that Dollar Tree is now consistently carrying these round blank signs, so you don't have to buy the ones from like the seasonal section. You just have the blank wood to work with. It just makes life a lot easier when you're crafting. So I took the twine off of this and I just gave it a good coat of white paint, so you'll just do whatever base color you want. And I am a big fan of like the ticking stripes. You guys know that I do that a lot. I love that in the farmhouse decor. Kind of adds kind of almost like a French country vibe to it also. But I just thought I saw signs similar to this on Pinterest, and I thought, you know what, I really like that. I think I can do that myself. So I just had all these pieces on hand since I'm crafting from my stash for this DIY, and so I thought it would be really fun. This washi tape from Dollar Tree works really well to do your stenciling like this with. You just want to make sure that you have it pressed down well enough to make sure that no paint seeps underneath it. Now this paint is kind of close to the pool color or Robins of Waverly, or like the Robin's egg color in Dixie Belle. I mixed it myself just with colors that I had. But any color that you want to use obviously is going to work for this, but I didn't have either of those colors on hand, so I tried my best to create them because I do love that kind of lighter bluish green tone. And you can see that I painted that middle stripe, and then I thought, well, I'm going to put another piece of tape on the edge here to create the little stripes on the side of the ticking stripe. And you can see how well when I peel that washi tape back, like the only piece that I paint that got was my error because I went outside of the lines. But you know, sometimes you need to color outside the lines in life, right? So now I am deciding to distress this. And so I'm just taking an emery board. I love using an emery board in crafting because it gets into all those little areas. So whatever you have, a sanding block would probably work a little better to do this flat area of a space here. And then once I got that distressed, I'm coming in to do some stenciling. And I just have one of the Dollar Tree stencil brushes that I trimmed off to be completely flat because I felt like I could stipple that a little bit better. This, what am I trying to say? Okay, sorry. The stencil itself came from Hobby Lobby down their stencil aisle, and I just loved it. But I mean, of course, whatever stencil you have, or if you wanted to cut something out on your Cricut, I'm just showing some different methods of ways to get things without having to always use a cutting machine or something. But like the rub-on transfers would work great, printing on tissue paper. There's so many methods out there to do. So I'm using some chalk paste to do that because I didn't have any black paint, and I did want to do this in black. I'll kind of explain as I go here what happens. I make a kind of a boo-boo here in a minute, or a bad choice, I guess we'll say. But I kind of go with it. It does turn out pretty good in the end, but you're just using an up and down motion when you're stenciling and just making sure that you're getting the coverage. Now, this looks great. I should have just stopped here and left it, okay? And if I wanted to distress it, I should have done some white paint brushing over it. But for whatever reason, without thinking, I just decided to go over it with my emery board. And I don't know if it was because it was chalk paste or what, but the black just kept getting everywhere. And every time I would try and clean it up, like more black would just come. And I was like, this is garbage. Like I literally didn't know what to do. I just kept trying to do my best to try and clean it up with the baby wipes. And you can see like the more I wipe, the more the black comes. And I'm just using some white paint here to kind of brighten it up a little bit, because eventually I just had to stop and be like, I just have to accept the way that it is. So if you do want to distress it, I would suggest, since you've used black, and again, I don't know if it was just the chalk paste that I used or if it would have done this with like acrylic paint or chalk paint, but just take a little bit of white paint on like a brush and just dry brush over the top of it to give it that worn look. I think that would have achieved it much better. But I mean, it doesn't look awful. I mean, it actually looks pretty decent, but just with the process of how it was happening, I was a little disappointed that I'd made that decision. So again, learn from my mistakes, or if you like the way it looks, copy it exactly, I guess. So this is just some fencing wire or baling wire that we use on our farm. I stole it out of my husband's truck, and I get asked all the time about these little trimmers here. I got them at Lowe's. It's the Cobalt brand, and they work wonderfully to cut flowers, to cut wire. With the way that the handle is and where the tension is, it is like no pressure at all for you to cut through things super easily. But I'm sure you can find them at any hardware store, but I just get asked all the time about those. So I just use my pliers there to kind of twist that baling wire on the front there to kind of create that sign. And I do end up shortening this. I don't show that on camera, but I did shorten the handle on there. But overall, I think this looks really good. It's got that really faded, aged look, even though I didn't love the process that it went through. I think all in all, I'm going to hang this on my pantry door in my kitchen because I love to do that. I'll layer it maybe on a wreath. I just think it turned out really cute and very rustic looking. What do you guys think of this one?
For this DIY, I'm going to use a terracotta pot and then a lid off of one of the food saver containers from Dollar Tree. I am going to make a watermelon tray. Now, when I think of backyard barbecue, I love watermelon, and to me, no backyard barbecue is complete without watermelon. So all of my DIYs today are watermelon themed in the inspiration from a backyard barbecue. So some of these you could use as a centerpiece in a table at a backyard barbecue, or you could just have them in your home to bring that summertime feel in there. So after I get these glued together with some E6000 and some hot glue, I take them outside and just give them a really good coat of a green colored spray paint. This is just giving the base color, and then I'm going to paint a watermelon design on the top. So I just found anything I could. It happened to be this little glass tray from Dollar Tree to get a good shape of a circle on. And I do go around and I'm making like the watermelon rind here. So I leave the darker green on the outside and do a little bit of lighter green on the inside. Had I thought about this, I probably would have done this particular green line a little bit thinner, but it still looks good. You'll have to let me know what you think. So I just fill in the middle with some of the pink paint, and I'm just using acrylic paint for these, and I give that a really good coat for the center of my watermelon. And then after that, I'm going to go in and I'm going to create some little seeds on this. I think this would be perfect to set salt and pepper shaker on, a little floral display, something super cute. I don't believe this would be considered food safe, so I wouldn't put any food on it unless you put like a napkin or some tissue paper down on it. But I really think that this turned out so cute. To protect the paint job that I did, I am going to put a really good coat of Mod Podge all over, and so I do just lay some of that down and I go over all of the top of this, and then I even do the side edges of that scalloped edge on this lid to make sure that that paint is going to be absolutely protected from anything and it's not going to chip. Here's what it looks like after the Mod Podge dries. I think this just turned out so cute and absolutely darling. I think it is the perfect piece to bring that watermelon feel to your backyard barbecue. Let me know what you think of this piece down in the comments below. I thought it was super easy and super fun. I don't know if you guys remember back when I got this little sugar mold off of Amazon. I absolutely love it. I've been looking through the antique stores to find one. You can find them at a lot of different home decor stores right now, but I'll leave a link to this one that I found on Amazon. And I had decorated it for spring with some carrots like this. And I'll leave a link to that video if you want to see how I did that. But I am going to change it up for summer. I was so excited to find this on Amazon, and it was fairly affordable, and I just wanted to be able to change it for seasons. So I had just lightly hot glued this little picture on there, and I'm just showing you it comes right off. It looks perfectly great, and I'm just going to update it with a little bit of a summer flair. I have this faux lavender that I got at Joann's, and I'm just cutting off like 3 little sprigs to go in each of the little holes there. You could easily use anything from Dollar Tree, would be super easy and super cute. Whatever your favorite florals were, you can make it whatever color. Down in each of the little hole sections, I just have some Spanish moss and a little bit of reindeer moss on top to add a little bit of greenery. I did not glue those down in because I wanted it to be, I wanted to be able to remove it for different seasons if I needed to, if I had different ideas. Now I'm just taking some burlap ribbon, and I am just going to put this around all of the edges, and I will just glue it not to the wood, but I will just glue the ribbon to itself so it's easily removable when I'm ready to change it. Keep in mind that where this is not exactly straight up and down, there is an angle to it. The ribbon doesn't sit completely flat on the back. It kind of curves up, if that makes sense. You'll be able to see when I flip it over. And so it is going to go next to a wall, against a wall, so you would not see that. So just keep that in mind of where you're putting yours. I have this little chicken wire ribbon that came from Hobby Lobby, and I know this does not show up the best on camera. You can see it really well in person, the contrast. So if you were to do this or wanted to do a darker color of ribbon or something, I just thought this added a little bit of texture, and I loved it. Can you see how that doesn't sit completely straight on the back? Like it kind of goes up to a little bit of a peak, and that's just because this is kind of an angled cut that's to the piece of wood. Now I just kind of wrap the ends of the twine there, not the twine, I'm doing twine right now, but of the chicken wire on the back to make sure that that stays. And then I just take a few yards of jute twine and just wrap it around the chicken wire to add just another little element of texture there. And then I'm going to do a cute little bow to put on the front of it. So I'll just tie this off in a knot here, and then I'm just wrapping around my finger some jute twine, and I wrap it around maybe 20 times or so to make a bunch of little loops, and then I'll just wrap a centerpiece around 4 or 5 or 6 times. I'm not really sure. I just do it till it looks good, and then I'll just tie that off in the back in kind of just a little knot there, and I'll use those as the little tails that come down. So I snip those, I make sure it looks good. I'm snipping off the other little tails from that little tie, so it'll have some cute little tails as well, and I just kind of fanned that bow out. And you could do whatever color ribbon you want. These are just what I had here, and I know that they kind of all blend together here on camera. You can see them better in person, but a different color of twine would be absolutely darling, like a light color or something to have a little bit more contrast, but it really does look cute. I love how it turns out. Guys, I love this little sugar mold. I am so excited for every season. You'll probably see me do a few more of these to kind of give you ideas to style them, because it is so versatile. I mean, I think I paid $13 for this sugar mold, and it's going to be in my house all year long, and there's so many different fun things to do. And I'll leave a link to that down in my description box if you'd like to check that out. I picked this sign up at a garage sale last summer, and I absolutely love the little faux shiplap slats that are in there. Now this sign is cute the way that it is, but those colors do not match my house. They're kind of a little dark and drab for the fall colors that I do. So I'm excited to brighten this up and make it every day. So I take it out to my garage, and I just sand it down really good with my electric sander so those letters aren't going to be peeking through the paint. And then I'm just using my little fingernail file here to do a little touch-up sanding if there were any areas that I needed to focus on, or once I got it under better light, I could kind of see some areas I needed to sand a little better. Then I just take a baby wipe and make sure that all of that grit and everything from sanding, all the dust, is totally off of it before I start painting it.
I really like the black color that is on this frame, and it makes it so simple to leave it that color, and it really works with the project that I'm doing. So I just tape it off so I won't get any paint splatter or anything on that. And then I just take some chalk paint, and this is where you can customize it to your own decor. I really like the white shiplap look, and so I'm just painting white chalk paint over these slats here. I do one good coat, let it dry, and then go back over and do a second. You can do however many coats it would take to cover your project. Just know that when you're using white paint, you can kind of see my first coat there is not super doesn't have a lot of coverage, so I'm just using my heat tool there to kind of dry that quickly so I can kind of move through this. The second coat has a lot better coverage since it is that farmhouse style and it is rustic. We want it to look a little bit aged. It's okay if you can see a little of that original base coming through. Now I'm just going to remove the frame to reveal that black portion of the frame, and I will go through and sand all of the edges and the corners to make it look even more distressed. It was already beat up kind of a little bit, so I decided just to embrace that since it is farmhouse, and we're just going to sand it a little bit more and make it a little bit more aged. Now, can you see those slats where the shiplap is? You can see the paint pooling there. I really liked how that looked. It just kind of gave it more of that aged look. Now, I got this frame at Hobby Lobby. It was on their clearance, so it was about $5, it looks like there, and I loved how this looked. It was the perfect size for this. You could do whatever shape of wreath you have, whatever color, make it for Christmas time, fall time. You can change this out however you would like to do that. I have this thick burlap ribbon, and so I am just going to make this hang from the burlap ribbon. So I just cut a length of that, and then I am just lining the edges of that ribbon up. Now, I really wanted this to be sturdy hanging from this. I didn't want it to go over the top of the frame to the back. I kind of wanted to put it underneath, if that makes sense. So I just kind of pry that shiplap a little bit until it opens up there, and then I'm just going to feed that burlap ribbon through over to the back edge. Once I have that through and I have my slat pressed back in place, I am just going to cut that ribbon off. It only needs to be over just a little bit. You don't need a lot hanging there. And then I'm just going to use some hot glue to kind of give that a little bit of extra security. I glue the base portion and then the middle, and I just press that down until it's dry. Now, it does have these little sawtooth hangers. I do take one of those off. I use a hammer to place it on the back there so I can hang it the correct direction. However you would like to hang it is up to you, or you can even just lay it, stand it up against something. So now I just had to decide if I wanted the wreath to go in front of the burlap ribbon or behind. I chose to leave it behind. That's a matter of personal preference. I am so pleased with how this came out. I absolutely love this. It is perfect for everyday farmhouse. I can even change the wreath out for different seasons. Next time you're at your thrift store or a garage sale, look for these staple pieces like this that maybe you don't love the design and you saw how easy it was to change and make it super neutral. Have you guys seen these darling wooden lanterns start to surface around the cute little shops and on Instagram and places? I absolutely love them and wanted to try and make my own. So I had to come up with a template. I'm going to use my jigsaw to make these. So I found this particular one that I decided to use as a template. So all I did was I went on my phone and took a screenshot of this item. Then I went into Cricut Design Space and clicked on upload and then chose this from my photos. So then I take my eraser tool and I'm just erasing around it, and then I'm using the little magic wand tool to take away any of the other solid spaces that I don't want. And then I just go ahead and erase this part of the bottom to make a straight line, and then I'm erasing everything out of the center here. This is going to allow me to cut a template out on my Cricut. So I don't know if you guys have ever used this feature before where you can go upload your own images, but this was the only way I could think of to get this particular shape that I wanted. So then you just hit your next button, and I'm smoothing it out to take any of the ridges or anything out. And then I obviously just save it under what I want my name to be and save it as a cut file. And then it will go ahead and insert it into your canvas that you're working on. And then you just size it to what you want, and then you'll just cut that out. So you can see here, I'm just taking that out, and I'm using, if you guys saw my project where I cut my Gothic window out, I'm using a piece of that same wood. So for $30, I got this gigantic piece of wood, and this piece right here is a third of it. So I can easily cut another lantern, like 2 more lanterns and 2 more windows out of the other pieces I have, if that makes sense. So this was just one of the 3
sheets I have. So I'm just taking my jigsaw and I'm I'm cutting along the lines that I've traced, and I'm just working, the jigsaw is very easy to use. This is the second project I've ever done. It goes slow. It's not super fast. I was worried that it was going to be faster than what I could handle, but you honestly can go your own speed. And even at like the fastest you would go, it's still rather slow that you feel very in control. So definitely look in to using some power tools if you have access to some. We were remodeling our bathroom and needed a jigsaw to do a couple of the things in there. I think we got this for around $50 or $60. I mean, they start around $30 and go up. We just went with this one because we felt some of the features it had was a little bit nicer than the lowest end, but they're not very expensive. So I definitely recommend looking into getting one if you've wanted to. I mean, the 2 projects I've made, I have absolutely loved. When my husband saw this one finished, he was like, "You made that?" Like, he was very impressed. So I then cutting off the ends to get them the length that I want and making sure that they both line up, both pieces, because I cut this out twice. So I have 2 of these shapes cut out. And then I'm sanding the edge to round it off and make it look like it's not so harshly cut out of wood. I'm giving it a little bit of a distressed look already. Then one of the pieces you're going to cut the top in half, so it will be in 2 separate pieces, because you're going to put these together like how you just saw there. So I'm taking one of the center pieces from them to cut the base out of. So I clamped all my pieces. You can kind of see in the bottom corner there. I clamped them together and then I set them on the base so I knew where to mark out how to cut the square of my base. So you can just see I'm cutting that, and I do a little bit of a rounded edge to the corners because I thought that was a pretty nice look. Now I apologize because I was out of frame when I filmed this, so I'm going to do the best to show you. That you can see down on the piece on the table there's that little bit of glue, and I'm gluing the edge of the top of the piece I cut in half, and I'm going to glue that to where that other glue was, so these are all together. So I do that with both sides, and I apologize that I had that out of frame, but you can kind of see how it's standing up here and how it is. Then I'm taking these paint stir sticks and I'm measuring them where I want them cut and cutting them in my miter box at a 45-degree angle, and you can see how they fit right in there. Then I'm going to take my glue, and I do use some hot glue to give it that little bit of temporary hold, and glue it to my base. And then I'm going to do the same thing with each of these little pieces that I cut at the 45-degree angle to glue them in. You can kind of see how I take the wood glue and the hot glue. I want this to be extremely sturdy, so that way it's not coming apart, and trust me, it's not going anywhere. And then I do take some hot glue and I do go in and glue around each of the pieces there just to give it an extra layer of stability where it's on the inside. I don't think you're going to see it that much. And then I do take some wood glue. I cut this little circular piece out of the MDF board also, and I just glue that on with some wood glue, and then I clamp it. Now between each stage of these with the wood glue, I'm waiting about an hour to 2 hours to let it dry. Overnight is the best cure, 24 hours for wood glue, but it is so sturdy, you can see even after a couple of hours. So I take this little finial that I got at Hobby Lobby, and I'm just gonna put the wood glue on that, and I'm gonna smear it with my finger a little bit to get a good coverage, and then I'm gonna clamp that on and let that cure. So you can see when I take that clamp off that I can literally shake it by that finial and it's not going anywhere. So I decided to spray paint this because I thought that would give me the easiest and best way to get coverage. You can of course do whatever style and whatever suits you the most and in whatever color. I kind of thought maybe a Kelly green color might be kind of fun to do, or a coastal blue. but I just wanted kind of a neutral one for this one. I go along each of the edges with my emery board, and we're gonna rough it up. All of the pictures of these I've seen, all the ones in person I've seen, have been very well weathered and distressed, so I don't feel bad at all about doing that with this. I do go in with some of the mineral chalk paint. It is an extremely good color to give you some weathered and aged look. I had never really used mineral for aging, and I saw Teresa from Teresa B DIY do it on some of her projects, and I loved the way it looked. So thanks for giving me the inspiration, Teresa. And I just go around, you can see how it gives it that really good aged and weathered look. Guys, what do you think of this? I still am amazed when I look at this that I actually made this myself. Power tools are so fun, and if you have access to some, I definitely recommend trying some of these projects out. This was the second thing I had ever made with my jigsaw, and I mean, I just feel like it turned out amazing. You're gonna have to let me know down in the comments what you think. I hope that this gives Missy from the Crafty Cove some inspiration. She has been saying that she wants to start working with some power tools, so I hope this gives her some inspiration to get working on some of those fun projects. But let me know down in the comments how you would style this. Would you use it with candles? Would you style it with some other things? I feel like this fits so many different decor styles, so definitely let me know down in the bottom what you think.
I am so excited to show you this particular DIY. I think this turns out so fun. I'm going to make a little bird cage out of these emery boards and some spindles that I got on Amazon. So I do take just this little round wood platform that you can get at Hobby Lobby. I think I've seen them at Dollar Tree. I know you can get them at Joann's. I happened to find mine at a yard sale. Somebody was selling a whole box of different shapes of these, so I snagged that up so I'd have these. And I just take some wood glue and I glue a 4-inch insert, the inner portion of an emery board ring, to that. And then I'm taking these, I believe they're 5-inch spindles that I got on Amazon. I will link them below in my description box for you so you can find them easily, along with the emery, or not emery boards. Oh my gosh, you guys, the embroidery hoops. So anyway, I just take each of these spindles and use a little bit of hot glue and then glue them all around, use a little bit more hot glue for some support. And then I take some wood glue on a little craft stick there to spread it onto each of the top of the spindles. And then I take another insert from an embroidery hoop and I clamp it. I use my little Dollar Tree clamps to clamp it on to give it a good, strong, secure hold. But before I do that, I am going to use a little bit of hot glue. That's just going to give it that little bit of temporary quick hold, so that way it will dry quickly and then the wood glue can finish drying. The next thing I do is take some embroidery hoops and kind of fit them in and mark where I need to cut each of these. That way I'm going to cut 3 of them to make the top to the bird cage. And so I will kind of fit them in and I'll draw a little bit of a line where I need to cut. That way I know how tall I want the top of the bird cage to be. I will tell you from my experience that if you plan on putting like a little teeny potted plant or something in this, then definitely do not glue these in now. Just kind of dry fit them in, and then when you'll go and spray paint this, and then you will put your plant in and then glue the top on, because it's very hard, depending on how much space you leave between the spindles, to get things in and out. I did learn this the hard way, so I'm just passing on my knowledge to you. And then I did clamp the top because I did put a little bit of wood glue there to help keep it all affixed together. But after I take off all of the clamps and everything, this is what it looks like. I'm loving it. I do have this little teeny finial that I bought in a pack of 2 or 3 from Hobby Lobby. So I just use a little bit of wood glue on that to get that glued right onto the top. I did spray paint it this kind of steel blue color. It was late at night when I spray painted it, so the footage was extremely dark, but you've all seen me spray paint before, so you know what that looks like. But I love how the color turned out. I will link the color of that down in the description box. But I take just a little bit of the plaster Waverly chalk paint and dry brush this on to give it that little bit of weathered look.
And I love how these two look together. I love this color of the steel blue. And I think that that little bit of dry brushing on it really brings out the details of those spindles as you go around. And I do just make sure that I get the inside of all of them and everything. And of course, you'll do this step too before you glue the top on if you're going to put a plant down inside. And then after you finish this, you can go ahead and glue those in. But I just really think that this white on top of this blue, it just really sets it apart. I think it makes it look very high end, and like, I'm seriously so excited to use this in my decor. I think it looks so cute. Here's everything completed with the little plant inside of it. This is just one of the little plants that I got at IKEA. They come in like a set of 3. I think it looks so fun. This is just absolutely charming. I think it's going to be so cute. What do you guys think of this one? Are you guys big into bird cages? I absolutely am loving them right now.
I would like to thank you so much for taking time to watch this compilation mega video. It really means a lot to me. Did your favorite make the list? Did you see something new that you enjoyed? I would love to know down in the comments, either one of those. I always love reading what you guys enjoy seeing. I hope that you have such an amazing day, and I'll see you next time. Happy crafting!